is KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank.
Hello and welcome to another edition of 3MA. I am John Kurtz, joined as always by Derek Young from K-State Online, Cole Manbeck, former beat writer for the Manhattan Mercury. We are here talking about a K-State victory. K-State wins 38-21 in Lubbock. I was on the verge of saying blows out Texas Tech. That's probably not fair. It was a similar game. I would say it felt pretty similar to me to like UCF, where it was, jumped out early, felt like you were the better team in the first half. Probably should have been up more than you were. It was teetering there for a minute, and then you just threw a knockout punch and kind of ran away with it at the end of the game. Very, very similar script there. But of course, I'm sure a lot of you were celebrating. Hopefully you were celebrating with your Ben Holiday Bottled in Bond Bourbon, your 360 vodka from our friends at Holiday Distillery. If you haven't tried it now, what are you waiting for? Now is the time. Still plenty of tailgates left. We got back-to-back home games coming up. TCU and Houston. You need to get your tailgate stocked up and loaded, so make sure you get out to Holiday Distillery. Ben Holiday Bottled in Bond Bourbon, 360 vodka. Go find it. And support those who support us here on the pod. There was a lot going on in Lubbock, my friends, because Avery Johnson is the star of the show with 5 rushing touchdowns. He saved the day when K-State's offense was scuffling again with Will Howard, and provided the juice that not only the team needed in the game, but really that the season needed, if we're being quite honest. This has really injected, I think, a lot of life into the fan base by the fact that you win the game in what was really a swing game for what the rest of the season can be, with 2 pretty winnable home games coming up back-to-back. But also you win it with a guy that looks like he can elevate the ceiling of what this season is going to be when, unfortunately, and look, I love Will Howard, but just hadn't really been working very well the last couple of weeks on offense.
Yeah, I was actually laughing there because for those that don't know, and that's all of you apparently, obviously, we're recording at 7:30 a.m. to kind of accommodate everyone's schedule, and John says now is the time to dig in on that 360 vodka and Holiday Distillery. It's 7:30 a.m. So I got to laugh out of that. But yeah, it was the Avery Johnson show. I would probably hit back just a little, not a lot, on the offense scuffling, just because one of the final 2 times we saw Will Howard, he delivered a great ball to Ben Sinnott for a big chunk of yardage. And I don't think he necessarily lost the ability to go and finish that game. I think Avery Johnson just went out and took it. So that's how I would say it. But, I mean, obviously Avery Johnson.
Do you think they win the game with the Will Howard offense?
Yeah, because I don't think Texas Tech had an offense to go win that game.
Okay, I think if Baron Morton stays healthy and Will Howard is playing quarterback the rest of the way, I do not think K-State is winning that game.
I would agree. They're in trouble in that scenario. And I'll get on that because I'll fight back for the people, especially like the Boyds of the world that says, Texas Tech quarterback situation doesn't happen. Texas Tech runs away with it. That's like ludicrous in general. But
no, Ian Boyd, was that Ian Boyd that said that?
Yeah.
Can I stop?
Ian Boyd might know less ball than anybody on the internet, I think, is what we've discovered in the last like couple years.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, let's just say, hey, Ian Boyd, if you're listening, you don't understand football, man. You are a fraud. You're a hack, and it's pretty embarrassing. So go ahead, DY.
Yeah. Wow. It was a little bit more pointed.
Again, it is 7:39 a.m. People. It is 7:39 a.m. and that's the energy that Cole's bringing.
What I would say there, and the only thing I want to fight back there is like Kansas State deserves a little bit of credit there too, and not that they're setting out to hurt someone. But one of the best things I liked about Kansas State on Saturday night is they were the aggressor. They were the ones that were going to dictate how that game was played. I thought maybe in the losses, it just felt, like we said, maybe the spirit was lacking. There was a little bit, you couldn't tell the heart. You couldn't tell the passion. And I even wrote in my preview piece on KSO last week, I was like, I wouldn't care if they got a penalty on Saturday because they were a little bit more physical and just got knocked someone in the mouth. And I thought that's what we saw. They were the ones knocking Texas Tech in the mouth. And at the end of the day, you beat a Texas Tech team that's one of the probably more 5 talented teams in the Big 12 by 17 points on the road. Third-string quarterback or not, that's impressive. And you have played a part in that there being a third-string quarterback in that game because you were so physical. You were the one knocking the other team in the mouth, and you did affect the quarterback as much as you did. So, as much as it was fun watching Avery Johnson run around the yard and go 8 of 9 through the air, and I'll touch on that further, later in this show. I thought the biggest takeaway for me was the way that just as a team, they played with spirit and knocked the other team in the mouth.
I mean, like when Kobe Savage was having his interceptions, like that was like as hyped up as I feel like I've heard the sideline the entire year, both of those times. Also, I would like to point out, we're talking about hitting people in the mouth. Jay Clifton sure hit the shit out of somebody. He sure did. He got thrown out of the game for it, which is a whole other issue.
Yeah, and by the way, perfectly timed, because one of the halves he missed is only for 24 seconds. So
yeah,
that's a great point. Yeah,
it's a big deal because you don't want to lose him in the first half against TCU. So the fact that it occurred at the end of the first half, only missed the second half of the Tech game, and he'll be good to go to start the TCU game. I agree, DY. I mean, I think the number one thing that I wanted to see going into this game was an inspired performance. I think we all wanted to see them come out with a lot of energy, effort, and fly around to the football and knock some people around, and I think we saw that. We not only saw it with the defensive side of the football, but we saw it up front with the offensive line. We saw it with Ben Sinnott knocking people on their butts out there on the field multiple times. I mean, Ben Sinnott had his best blocking game that I can ever recall at Kansas State. It wasn't just the touchdown run with Avery that everybody sees with the knocking two guys on their ass. It was multiple times Ben Sinnott was out there laying guys to the ground. I mean, this K-State offensive line now has helped produce 3 straight running performances of over 200 yards. They're averaging 5.8 yards per 6.2 yards, I think, per carry over the last 3 games. 258 yards on the ground the last 3 games on average. They're now averaging on the season 5.4 yards per carry. By my count, that would be the best in program history if the season ended today. I went back to 1990, and the best they'd ever had was 5.3 yards per carry. That was in the 2016 season. Again, there's plenty of games left to go, so the numbers can dip a little bit, but that shows how well they're performing, and I had gone back years before that in the past, so I think it is the best in program history. If not, it's one of the best. It's they're getting after it on the ground game. Avery Johnson obviously helps too. We'll get into the numbers and Trayshawn Ward and Avery and all of that, but just from a high-level perspective, looking at the game, I thought K-State came out and played with an energy that we maybe hadn't seen this year, and now I expect that energy to carry over, right? Because everybody's got good vibes flowing now. You're right in the hunt of this Big 12 race with 2 winnable games in Manhattan and an opportunity to get off to a 4-1 start in league play.
Yeah, the rest of the league, I mean, based on what is going on around there, it's a jumbled mess outside of Texas and Oklahoma. So it's absolutely there for the taking for you to be the top contender, just waiting for them to slip. Now, you'll have a shot at Texas later in the year, but I think the goal right now would be position yourself as the best of the rest and hope that you find a way to slip in there. But no, fair points all the way around about much better spirit, much better effort from everybody. I mean, the way that K-State ran the football, like the offensive line had a tremendous day. Trayshawn Ward looked as good as he has looked all season long. I mean, I think it's fine the way the running back thing is playing out, where it's like you ride the hot hand and whoever is the guy that you need to go with that day, you give him the football a little bit more. It was DJ Giddens against UCF. Last couple of weeks, it's been Trayshawn Ward. And I think it's fair to point out that, like, with Avery Johnson in the game and all the attention on his explosive skill set, that seemed to really open up Trayshawn Ward too. That seems like a really good match. Those two kind of play off each other with their skill sets really well, because we'll talk a lot about Avery, and Avery's going to get a ton of attention, but Trayshawn Ward had a hell of a day too with over 100 yards and was a huge part of the offense. And I shout out to Mason, who put in our group chat just a little bit ago, one of the bigger plays of the game was a 2nd and 15, and Trayshawn Ward busted for 14 yards, and almost, I thought it was almost a bad spot, and maybe he had the first down. So he had some huge plays in the game too.
Almost 8 yards a carry. Trayshawn Ward definitely deserves a lot of credit. They needed him. Ben Sinnott, 6 catches, 72 yards. That's almost a stat line that you can count on nearly every game as well. And he did it on 6 targets. So there's a lot of efficiency there. There's a lot of efficiency with this offense in general. And I'm sure we'll dig into it, but at the end of the day, the difference was probably turnovers, because a lot of the numbers look pretty much the same across the board when you compare the two teams. The one that is glaringly different is Texas Tech committed 3 turnovers. Kansas State didn't commit any. Both teams had 23 first downs. Both teams had 5 penalties for 45 yards. Average yards of play, Kansas State won 6.8, 6.1, pretty close. Average yards of rush, Texas Tech won 6.1 to 5.9, pretty close. Red zone, K-State 4 of 4, Tech 3 of 4. That's pretty significant as well. But just look up and down the stat sheet here. The sacks are about the same. The TFLs are about the same as well. The only glaring difference between the two clubs was Kansas State didn't turn it over and Texas Tech did.
Yeah, we can talk about that too. I mean, turnovers were a huge part of the game. I mean, it was the polar opposite of the Oklahoma State game where it was 3-0 turnovers against Kansas State. This time they flipped the script and it's 3-0. 3 straight interceptions on 3 consecutive drives in the second half by freshman quarterback Jake Strong for Texas Tech. Obviously, that played a huge part in this game. Could have been 4 turnovers if not for the targeting penalty on Jay Clifton, which was a huge swing play in the game. John, you brought up Trayshawn Ward. I think it's a great point. Trayshawn Ward averages almost 8 yards per carry, 15 touches, 118 yards against Tech. Last 2 games now, 177 yards on 24 carries, 7.4 yards per rush over the last 2 games. He looks like he's got a little different burst to him right now after missing that UCF game. He looks refreshed out there. You mentioned Avery Johnson and him on the field together. Okay, well, Trayshawn Ward had 6 rushes in this game for over 10 yards, which by most metrics, a 10-yard rush or more is counted as an explosive in the running game. Trayshawn Ward has 6 of them in this game. He had 7 on the season going into this game in his first 4 games in totality. He has 6, and they all occurred with Avery Johnson at quarterback on Saturday. So, I mean, he's had some nice running plays with Will Howard at quarterback as well. But I think to the point you made with him, with Avery, like the nice tandem, it does seem like they play off each other pretty darn well. And K-State has now 2 running backs. DJ Giddens averaging 5.8 yards per carry on over 500 yards on the ground, and Trayshawn Ward at 5.6 yards per carry. It's pretty darn solid. K-State's got 4 guys, including the quarterbacks, over 100 yards on the season on the ground, and they're all over 5 yards per carry.
How many yards does Ward have on a season?
It's like 350 DY. I just had 337 on 60 carries.
I was just thinking out loud because it's like I think we all understand that there's a chance that it's Avery's show the rest of the way, and the way Avery can run it. I was going to see if they Huh?
Is it Avery's show the rest of the way?
I think it could be. I mean, Chris Lyman being non-committal, I think is pretty says a lot, because it would have been easy to say it's still Will Howard's team.
Okay, yeah, fair. I don't mean to derail it with that discussion right now. I just thought the way you put it out there caught me off guard a little bit. I wouldn't.
Well, at the very least, it's probably going to look like it did Saturday.
Yeah.
At the very least. Anyway, my point was, and then Avery Johnson had 91 rushing yards against Texas Tech. And I think he is probably more explosive days down the road. And I know they're going to have to unlock the passing game still, and we'll get to that. But I was like, man, there might be, especially if they were to get to Arlington, and then obviously playing a full 3 1,000-yard rushers is probably not impossible. But obviously Ward and Avery would have to kick it into high gear a little bit.
Yeah, and there's also, can you? I mean, I hate to bring up this point, but can you get to the point where Avery, giving him the volume of carries that it would take to get to 1,000 yards, are you running a real injury risk there? But
you could be. But what I will say is, like, if you have a passing game, and I think they can get there, if you have a passing game, I don't know if it takes a high volume of carries to get Avery to 1,000.
Yeah, because I mean, all he needs is like a little. I mean, that guy is just a lightning bolt. Like, all he needs is a little sliver. That, I think, the biggest play in the game was it 3rd and 10 when they're down 21-17. It was a 3rd and long.
It was a 30-yard touchdown run. And what I will say is they did that against the 9-person box too.
Yeah, I mean, no, it was like quarterback sweep. And as the play started, I was like, oh God, like, this does not look good. But you just give him a little tiny lane, man, and he just explodes through it. I mean, untouched.
30-yard touchdown against the heavy box. You got to give and he wasn't touched. So you have to shake the hand of every offensive lineman. When you get a 30-yard touchdown against the heavy box without being touched, your offensive line's doing something right.
Yep, and you also have just a phenomenal talent at quarterback. This is probably where we're going to take a break here in just a second. Then we should probably just dive all the way into the Avery discussion. But the comparison that I was seeing people make was like, kind of like college Lamar Jackson. I mean, that really seems like what the skill set of Avery is right now. Why don't I'll let you sit on that, and we'll take a break here as we remind you that you should stock up on your home field gear, like Derek Young, who right now is wearing Derek, I do have to say, you're wearing now the shirt of a Big 12 rival, the Arizona Wildcats.
Big win.
They did kick the absolute crap out of Washington State 44-6 with a backup quarterback. So yeah, shout out to Jed Fish and company. And it is a sweet logo. I will give you that. And actually,
logo.
I have the best shorts, I think, in college basketball sitting in my drawer right over there, which are Arizona basketball shorts, because I kind of liked Arizona growing up. Shout out to the 97 Wildcats. That's BKU in the tourney. Okay. But Home Field Apparel has not only Arizona gear, they've got tons of K-State gear, all sorts of great K-State stuff that you see us wearing here if you watch on YouTube, on the pod all the time. So get to homefieldapparel.com, use the promo code 3MA23 to get 15% off your first order. This is another one. What are you waiting for if you haven't done this now, man? It is great stuff, incredibly comfortable, very slick looking, lots of different variety, old school logos, and hundreds of teams on there if you're wanting to branch out beyond just the Cats. 3MA23 for 15% off your first order. Homefieldapparel.com. We're back next with more Avery Johnson talk.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network. Make sure you download our new app. Find it on the App Store or Google Play. Just search KC Sports Network.
Did you see, by the way, I'll just throw in one little conference realignment tidbit here. In that latest Ross Dellinger story, that he had produced the list that Kevin Warren went through last year in the Big Ten of like their extended wish list for expansion. It was 12 teams. Did you see who was on it from the Big 12?
I saw your teaser on your YouTube channel that you tweeted out, John, but I didn't watch it. Sorry, I didn't have time.
You couldn't. Just give me a click. I don't even care if you watch it. Just give me a view.
I'm sorry. I'll try that next time. I was distracted. What was it?
It's fine. John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo, by the way, Cole, who I contribute to the channel. It was Kansas and Arizona. Okay. Arizona really surprised me. There was another one on that list that surprised me, which was Pitt. I was like, what the hell is Kevin Warren doing? But yeah, it was like Oregon, Washington, Cal, Stanford, Notre Dame, Kansas, Arizona, Pitt, and then the ones you'd expect from the ACC, like North Carolina, Clemson, Florida State, Virginia. I think that was the list.
Yeah, and I have a couple sources that said Kevin Warren, the Big 12 office floated out some schools. Kansas State floated out they weren't interested, so he didn't include them on the list. So,
okay.
So he didn't even include them because K-State had floated out that we're Big 12 pride here. So, yeah.
Okay, great. All right, look at that. You guys get a little inside scoop on the pod today. Didn't even save it for Patreon. But
yeah, I should have put that on our Discord. I'm sorry, guys, but
But hey, if you want more of this sort of energy, like we were pretty on fire on Saturday night, you can check out patreon.com/3mod to get the immediate post-game show. If you want post-game reaction every single week, we've got that on the Patreon page, patreon.com/3mod. Bonus content up there every week. Usually another bonus pod throughout the week. You get Brody predictions. I will say I think like my favorite Brody video that I've seen so far was posted to our Patreon members. You could see Brody actually running routes against his sister and getting away with offensive pass interference. I feel for you, Brooklyn. I'm sorry. But you can watch those videos on Patreon, patreon.com/3mod if you want to support the pod that way. D-Why, did you see it?
I did not.
Okay.
Lubbock trips kind of take you out of everything, I will say.
Yeah. No, I feel you, man. I remember so many trips stopping at our tradition was we'd always stop at the Big Texan in Amarillo. If we
brought that up to me. Yeah.
Yeah. If we won, which I am 4-1 in Lubbock. So I did that 4 times. The only time I did not was when Patrick Mahomes was playing in Lubbock. Anyway, yeah, K-State kind of owns the Red Raiders. Avery Johnson, a huge part of it. What do you think about the Lamar Jackson comp? Like that to me seems like what the skill set is. Like he's such an elite speed end-to-end runner right now. And I know, look, he's got to develop. I'm not saying he's Heisman Trophy winner Lamar Jackson right now, but that's kind of like what he compares to. And Lamar could throw the ball well enough. Maybe you're going to tell me you think Avery has higher potential as a passer. I don't know. I'm curious what you think of that comp.
I like it. So the skill set is, from all the comps that I have heard, that is the best one, I would say. Now, I do think at least college Avery has a higher ceiling of potential as a passer, at least higher than the one that Lamar had ever reached. And I know Lamar was smaller in college than he is now. That's everybody. Now he's kind of thicker than I ever thought he'd be, to be quite honest. But I don't know if Avery gets to that size of what Lamar is now. I'll say.
Yeah, no, probably not. Probably not.
Yeah, it's obviously puts a lot on him, but I think Avery is maybe a little bit more of a natural passer, like his motion, than Lamar Jackson. But from a statistical perspective, if you tell me, obviously, we get Lamar Jackson out of Avery, I mean, I think the speed comparison is great. I could see that comp. It does make some sense. I mean, look, Lamar Jackson, I was just checking. He threw for 3,500 plus yards each of his last 2 years at Louisville and ran for 1,500 or so each season. I mean, man, was he dynamic. And, I think Avery has the speed of a Lamar Jackson. And if he gets the passing game consistently nailed down and they get him some weapons, then yeah, I think it's a fair comp.
That's a part of it is, the weapons. Is there going to be enough to help facilitate the passing game this year? Because Avery can throw the ball. Like, I don't worry about that. I mean, you saw that throw to Jace Brown late in the game. That was a really nice ball, kind of layered throw that got in there to him. He's also perfectly content to just take some checkdowns, and he's got a strong enough arm that he can sit there like in time on the money. I thought one of the better throws he had was actually on a 3rd and 1. Really good play call by Colin Klein where they were just loading up, expecting Avery to run, and he swings it out to Phillip Brooks, put it right on the money, which allowed him to pick up the first down with ease. So you're seeing some things from him. And obviously, if you go watch his high school tape, I mean, he can definitely sling the ball. But the question is going to be like, can they? How tough of a putt do you think it is, Derek, to get the balance of run to pass with Avery when he's in the game to tilt just a little bit, maybe like swing that 10 to 15% more toward the pass from where it was on Saturday in the running game?
That's going to be tougher, and because of multiple reasons. Because not only are you talking about maybe an assortment of weapons that hasn't lived up to its hype, underachieved, or just isn't good enough. And then you have to talk about and because of that, to do that, you're talking about probably fitting in really tight window throws. Now Avery has the arm talent to do that, but when you're going to be counted on to do that at a higher clip because of what your passing game is, then you're really running the threat of the freshman turnover mistakes. And obviously they weren't able to avoid them anyways this year, but that's just tougher. But what I will say is that clearly you have a better running game and a more dangerous running game that threatens defenses with Avery Johnson in the game. And going forward, they're going to get different looks because teams know that they got to stop Avery's running or it's just going to kill him, and they'll end up like Texas Tech. So he's going to get better windows to throw the ball than probably what Will Howard got just because of that rushing threat. So it could also become a better passing offense because of that. But for that to happen, these passing weapons do have to pick it up. And maybe they don't have to pick it up as much if you just get different looks and different coverages and better windows to throw, which I think that's going to be the case. And if not, Avery Johnson will just run all over a bunch of teams. I mean, that threat really changes the dynamic of how you have to defend Kansas State. Not the same way, but this is a different way, altogether a different way. Like teams had to defend Kansas State so much differently the last 3 years because of the threat of Deuce Vaughn. And now you kind of have that game breaker in Avery Johnson that you basically will have to defend Kansas State so totally differently because of that threat.
Yeah, no, I mean, teams are going to have to devote more resources to try and stop the run, which is going to mean that K-State's skill guys and their wide receivers are going to be more in single man, one-on-one coverage situations where they just got to beat their guy. It's
not. I don't think it's necessarily the going to the man coverage part because they're already getting that because their defenses just aren't scared of the receivers. They're already getting that. I think it's just you're just getting different looks. And when you get different looks, you can throw different schemes that maybe are more conducive to your weapons.
I thought it was interesting, DY, on the drive where I expect them to go ultra conservative. So they get the third interception on Tech with about 10:50 left in the game. And it was Yeah, and it was that drive up 10 where they actually dropped back. They had Avery throw it 3 times on that drive. He completes all 3 passes. That included he had a 10-yard pass to Jaden Jackson, the little 11-yard bubble screen to Phillip Brooks on the 3rd and 1 that you referenced, John, and then the 21-yard pass to true freshman receiver Jace Brown, which was a really nice ball. And also, shout out to Jace Brown. Good to see a freshman wide receiver making a play there. I think that's an important element of this as well. But yeah, they let him throw it 3 times. He completed all 3 balls for close to 40 yards. Actually, slightly over 40 yards on that last drive that put the game away. 10-play, 80-yard drive that chewed up 6 minutes to put him up 38-21 with around 4 minutes left in the game. So the offense was incredibly efficient with Avery Johnson on the field. Look, Avery Johnson, when he was in at quarterback, the offense produced 35 points on 7 drives, 5 points per drive. Now, I do have to say Will was on the field a little bit for some of those drives and helped contribute to one of those scores for sure with that 42-yard pass to Ben Sennett that got them into scoring position. But the offense really had its way with Avery Johnson on the field, and he was certainly dynamic, man. I mean, you already mentioned it, John, the 3rd and 10, quarterback sweep that he gets into the end zone, and then they get the interception on the very next play. Shout out to BJ Payne on how he caught that ball with one hand there. That ball just flying over, he gets him down there at the 11-yard line, and then the very next play, Avery goes in untouched for another touchdown. And, then really in like a 5-minute span, K-State really just took control of that game. They scored a touchdown, they get an interception, and then they scored the very next play again to go up by 10 and didn't look back from there. So Avery Johnson, 5 rushing touchdowns. They said on the broadcast that was the most by any player in college football at the FBS level this year, and obviously the most since Colin Klein in a K-State uniform with 5 in 2011. So Avery was dynamic. It's fun.
This is from Fan, and I think this is just I think there was some garbage time maybe at the end. So with Avery Johnson at quarterback, Kansas State ran the ball 26 times. It was the success rate was over 73%.
Well, which is interesting because I was about to say there were even like 2 or 3 negative carries for Avery in there. But the problem when you're trying to defend him is that you can do that. Like Tech was able to do that. But then if K-State just keeps going at it, they get one play where they open up just a teeny little lane for him and bam, he's gone. He's just going to hit you with an explosive. So it's just really hard to consistently, I think, keep him down with how explosive that skill set is. I guess one of the questions now will become, how different is it now that TCU will have all of this film to look at for Avery? They're going to game plan for it for sure, regardless of what is said on Tuesday at the press conference of who's going to start and who's going to play quarterback. TCU, I'm sure, will devote a game plan specifically around stopping him, and how much does that change how effective Avery can be?
It could, but obviously there's going to be a lot more detail and nuance than to the plan than what we can really grasp or understand, just like the deep football X's and O's that go into it. But just from a 100-foot point of view, what we could say, they're going to dare Avery Johnson to throw the ball. They're going to make him they just watch what he can do with his legs. So in general, we're generalizing this. Excuse me. TCU's plan is going to be Avery Johnson's, assuming Avery Johnson, and this is his show, and they'll probably assume that it is his show, they're going to say, you're going to have to throw it on us. And so Kansas State's either going to run it anyway because they ran into heavy boxes with Avery against Texas Tech and still was successful, or they're really going to let Avery uncork it. It'll be interesting to what they do.
Cole, any thoughts on what the offense looks like this week? And if they, I kind of wonder the same thing. Like, do you, it feels like Colin has been a little bit tepid with what they're letting Avery do, and now that it appears like this is probably the way that you're going to move forward, do you now open up the passing game specifically more for Avery? I think you probably have to an extent, but how much so will we see that?
No, I think you do have to. And like we just talked about earlier, I think his dynamic explosiveness as a runner is going to open up some possible threats to get the passing game going, and some guys maybe getting open down the seam or getting open vertically deep. So, I think they'll have to throw the ball probably at least, 30% of the snaps that Avery is on the field. maybe even a little bit higher than that. They got to, I mean, they can't just treat him like he's a running quarterback because we know he can throw the football. Like, this is not your typical freshman quarterback that's just a pure athlete type runner. Avery is a true dual threat quarterback, and they need to let him throw the football. TCU has been decent against the run as well. I think I looked the other night, they're around 3.6 yards per carry. Now Tech was 3.5 yards per carry, which I hadn't even mentioned yet, but Texas Tech had been really good against the run this year, and K-State really owned them at the line of scrimmage up front. So a really solid performance again against a good Tech run defense. TCU's strength is probably defending the run, although I say that the last two games prior to Saturday, they had given up over 200 yards on the ground in each against Iowa State and West Virginia, and then obviously dominate BYU. So they've been a little up and down against the run, but 3.6 yards per carry. They're going to load the box. They're going to dare them to throw. And so K-State will have to draw back and throw. And you know what? I would kind of love, guys, just if Avery starts the TCU game, very first play of the game, go play action and try to go vertical.
What I would say is, like, and I said this in our group chat, I think, multiple times, because I've been harping on the issue, and I think I've wrote it a couple times at this point already, is that I love what we saw Saturday. I just don't know if that ratio is necessarily sustainable, just because teams are going to load up the box, try to take it away, and also just from a health standpoint, I think you got to keep that in mind. And I know we talk about that often, and I think it's probably even more exaggerated when it comes to Avery Johnson, just because of his size and him being a true freshman. These hits are going to add up, even if he doesn't get the one where he's absolutely smoked. And I will say that some of it's because of his speed and elusiveness, is he is pretty good at not taking a shot, but they do add up over time.
So I wondered, like, how his body is feeling now, because he's probably not had a game in high school, I would imagine, where he got hit as much as he did on Saturday in Lubbock.
He leads the Big 12 in rushing touchdowns, by the way.
Is that right? Just from one game? I mean,
yeah, well, there's a 6 or a 7-way tie with 6, and also I think Will Howard's in there.
Well, not just one. He had a TD against who's the first name of the year?
Semo, yeah.
I said 6, and now some stats don't count that, but because it's against an FCS foe.
Yeah.
But he has 6 rushing touchdowns. So does Will Howard. 6 is the lead in the Big 12.
K-State's top 5 in the country with 24 rushing touchdowns on the season now. They're top 15 in the country at 5.4 yards per carry. So I was surprised, guys, that his last touchdown, I think he could have beat the guys to the edge and outran them, those Tech defenders, and scored probably untouched. But he decided to just cut it in, had a couple defenders land on him, but still scored. Like, it just shows.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think he could.
I don't know if he beats him into the corner. That's a really fast DB.
Well, I just thought it was impressive the play he made, because he had the recognition that, like, that's going to be a tough one to get to the corner. So let me just. If you look at that's one of those, if you freeze frame that and look at the position and you'd be like, Avery Johnson scored here, you'd be like, how the hell did that happen?
John, I did freeze frame it. I freeze framed it and took a screenshot, because I'm like, how did he score here? Because it has like 3 Tech defenders chasing him, and then he decides to cut it up. And it actually kind of reminded me of his Semo touchdown where he cut it up in.
Yeah. I would say I like that he's able to recognize, hey, my speed here in high school, I could have just zipped by these guys. That one dude probably can catch me, and he's already recognizing that.
Yeah, he's special, man. He's absolutely special. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll discuss the Will Howard portion of this equation coming up next.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network. Make sure you download our new app. Find it on the App Store or Google Play. Just search KC Sports Network.
So we had a lot of shots of Will Howard on the sideline as all of this was happening, and TV is generally going to gravitate towards that. I'm glad they could devote so many resources to showing Will Howard on the sideline, but apparently not a single iota of resources to giving a replay on any single play that was happening throughout that game. Did anybody else have that complaint? And not even just like controversial plays, but it felt like they were like so spooked by Texas Tech running plays quickly that they just didn't show a replay of anything. Anybody else?
Yeah, I guess I don't know. DY, obviously you were in the box, so you didn't probably see many of the options to see replays. I don't know, John. I felt like I got a good, real nice look at the replay of Jerron Bradley, just stiff arming Jacob Parrish in the face in the end zone and shoving him out of bounds for a touchdown there, where there was somehow inexplicably no offensive pass interference. got a good look at the targeting call. A lot of replays of that on Jake Clifton as well. But no, I didn't necessarily have any qualms or issues with the replays. But then again, I was nervously pacing back and forth on my deck watching the game. So I don't know. Like I probably wasn't paying that much attention to that.
Yeah, and I got to, when I was actually watching the game like fully focused, that was on Sunday because I was at an event on Saturday, so I had a different experience with the game. Anyway, lots of shots of Will. It seemed like he was being the consummate teammate on the sideline. There was one interaction in particular late in the game when it was in hand where they're really going back and forth, and it almost looked like Avery kind of trying to be deferential and Will being like, no, man, like yeah, this is your moment, like you deserve this sort of a thing. I am still of the opinion that, and I know there's like a lot of Will Howard hate out there. I mean, first of all, you can advocate for Avery Johnson to play quarterback without running down the defending Big 12 champion last year, who was clearly what the team needed to win a Big 12 title last season. So let's chill out on any of that. But the other part is whether it's going to be injury related, because it's just like we pointed out multiple times, not just with K-State, throughout college football, all over the place, it happens. Or if it's going to be Avery as hits a wall some game and runs into a really good game plan that someone's thrown out there on defense, and you're going to have to utilize Will Howard a little bit. Like I still believe, even beyond just the people rolling their eyes like, oh, Kleiman's going to be too deferential and play Will Howard too much. Like I think they will legitimately need Will Howard again at some point this season. I am definitely of that mind.
I'd be stunned if they didn't need Will Howard again, and not just because I'm not trying to say, oh, they have to do Will Howard again because, just out of, instinct. No, it's college football, NFL football. I get a little annoyed at like the injury. Oh, can't stay with all the injury stuff. You look on Sunday. I mean, I think I get, because I'm in fantasy football, I get all these notifications on my phone every Sunday, and 15 of them are like because of football. One of my players got hurt, right? I mean, this is a brutal sport with brutality, and there's a reason why Kansas State's played a lot of backup quarterbacks already this year. I mean, they're not the only one that suffers the injury bug, and they will continue to suffer the injury bug because that's just the nature of football. That's why every coach in the preseason says what happens and what we become and what we accomplish by the end of the season will be a product of our depth, because they know that they'll have to go into that depth. That's why when we say, man, this is the deepest linebacker core that Kansas State's had in at least 6 years, Chris Klein's like, yeah, I hope we don't have to use it. Well, guess what? They have to use it. Now they're running out of linebackers. This is football. And it's here to stay. It's always been here to stay. And they'll need Will Howard again. And because he is a consummate professional, a consummate teammate, and he's been here before, he will be ready when his number is called. And I have little concern or issue with how he's going to handle this entire situation, regardless of what the dynamics tend to be, whether they just say, hey, Avery, you're the starter now, go do it. I think Will Howard's going to be incredibly disappointed, pissed off, probably more so in himself than anything. But he's not going to let that become a distraction to the team or hurt the team. And that's a product of who he is. And Kansas State's lucky because in most situations, this probably does become somewhat of a problem, and it probably won't at Kansas State. With that being said, there has been no announcement that Avery Johnson is the starter. All there has been, and it was immediately after the game, and what I expected was a non-committal answer from Chris Kleiman when asked, who's technically, essentially, in a roundabout way, asked, whose show is this going for? He says, we'll discuss it every week. We like both quarterbacks. We'll need both quarterbacks. And that's probably not wrong, like I just said. And for those that really want him to say, Avery Johnson's a quarterback, that was never going to happen because he's not going to make that proclamation, at least publicly, without talking to Will Howard in the days afterward.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even necessarily associate with like injuries being a thing for Kansas State at the quarterback position moving forward. I think Will Howard will play, injuries aside, at various points. I think he'll appear in every game the rest of the way. Will Howard has a role on this football team and on the field. He obviously has a role in mentoring Avery Johnson, which we know he will do. And Avery Johnson spoke to that. Like, Will is just his biggest advocate and supporter. But he'll also have a role in the field. And I would be surprised or stunned if he doesn't play in each game the rest of the way at some point. Like, I wouldn't even be surprised, guys, if Will Howard trots out a quarterback to start the TCU game, and it's similar to what happens against Texas Tech.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised either.
Now, the problem that you have there, guys, and you know this, is that then Will is on like pins and needles with the fans, the groans in a home game, and then they go 3 and out at some point, and everybody's like, "Oh, bring Avery in." It's like it's not really fair to Will. It's tough, man. I've said it numerous times. I do really hate this for Will. I mean, we've had him on the pod 3 times. We know how outstanding of a person he is, a teammate he is, and I just really wanted him to have a full season of normalcy with a lot of success, because every year there's been something, and last year he finally had that high with 6+ games on the field and so much success, and you wanted this for him this year, and it's just we talked about it on our Patreon pod after the game, John. It just feels like with this personnel that Kansas State has on the offensive side of the football, it's just, unfortunately, there's not enough weapons at the wide receiver position to be able to fully utilize Will necessarily in the way that you'd like. And Will hasn't played great either by any means, and he would tell you that. But it just feels like the personnel fits Avery Johnson and what they have there maybe a little bit better than Will Howard at quarterback.
You can't let this dictate or determine your decision, but I would hesitate to try out Will Howard there first, because even him just trying out there, that you're going to hear groans, and that's not. I don't want him to have to go through that, and especially if they were to go 3 and out and not score, then you're going to booze.
I better not. Yeah, I hope you do not hear that. But yeah,
but I mean, because they would be so frustrated that it's not Avery, with the fan base and the temperature. The temperature of the room, I think, suggests that might be the case.
Yeah, whether or not you would hear boos if he is trotting out there at first, I would hope that probably doesn't happen. But yeah, I think if a couple drives are going south, then you might start to hear some of that.
Yeah, I almost want, because I understand the whole like the Will Avery dynamic and the mere possibility that it at least looks similar to what it was at Lubbock. But I almost think it's worse to do that at home. I think, I don't know if you're going to get away with that in front of your own crowd at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I echo all of Cole's thoughts about Will too. And the one thing I will say too, and I think Will, I trust, knows this and understands this and is a part of the whole calculus. But I mean, it was like last year, he benefited from being the backup guy, like the opposite guy in this situation, right? The shoe was on the other foot last year, and everybody, including us, we were clamoring for him to play quarterback, and he did, and he was excellent and was just head and shoulders the better guy last year at QB, and it's worked out a little bit differently this year. And yeah, to Cole's point, what we were talking about on the Patreon pod is like, so last year when you had not only Deuce Vaughn to be such a threat in the running game, but then also Cade Warner and Malik Knowles plus Ben Sinnott in the passing game, like you needed to get it to all those weapons, and Will was clearly the guy better equipped to do that than Adrian Martinez this year. Yeah, I mean, let's call it what it is. The skill position, I mean, receiver particularly has just been such a disappointment. They've had to run. I mean, you said Will Howard's tied for the lead in the Big 12 in rushing touchdowns, because when they get in the red zone, that's all they got. That's what they use to be successful. And Avery Johnson's skill set is going to be more suited to that. So anyway, wish nothing but the best for Will, and I'm sure he will have some big moments the rest of the season for K-State. I've got to give a shout out to special teams because I've been very hard on them. I feel like deservedly so throughout what the year has been so far, but they were much better on Saturday. Aside from one penalty early, and maybe you can assign some of that to Phillip Brooks for looping back 15 yards on the punt return in the first quarter. But outside of that, I mean, they down a punt at the 1 yard line. Seth Porter was just a one-man wrecking crew on the coverage unit with a couple of tackles like inside the 20, pinning guys deep. Jack Bloomer continues to do a phenomenal job punting the football and pinning people deep. And then Chris Tennant just stepped up there and calmly stroked a 47-yard field goal that looked great early on in the game. So much better effort from special teams on Saturday, which was very nice to see.
Seth Porter was an animal. So, I mean, like you said, single-man wrecking crew, down to punt at the 1. 2 hellacious tackles, I think both inside the 15. Very passionate. I think he's someone that probably, it sounds like, got real emotional in the week that was. Says pissed off, and like not under my watch are we going to lose this special teams reputation that he obviously knows very, very well because he's a legacy. And his dad was a kicker at Kansas State. The special teams thing means a lot to him, and he took it personally, and I think just basically had this group reverse course and made a lot of the impact himself by his contribution on the field.
Yeah, I mean, Seth Porter's a captain on this football team. He's a leader in that locker room, a 6-year guy. And you could tell that he came out really inspired and kind of took it upon himself to really lift that special teams unit. And they had their best game of the season by far. The punting game, Jack Bloomer has 5 punts in the game. All 5 are downed inside the 20-yard line. The one obviously at the 1-yard line by Seth Porter, which was a phenomenal play. Unfortunately, Tech went 99 yards after that one, but it doesn't discount the effort by special teams there. Seth was great in kick coverage. Everything was really solid outside of the opening punt with a hold on special teams, and that was just Phillip Brooks trying to get to the outside opposite field where the wall was set up. Chris Tennant bangs through a 47-yard field goal right down the middle with plenty of leg, looked confident on that. So no qualms with special teams. Really nice job, and now you hope it carries forward. If they can put performances like that, you don't need like the kick, punt return, flash score or anything. If they can just be solid, you'll be happy with that moving forward.
I would sure take some of the.
Well, I'm not going to complain. Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to be too greedy here, John.
No, I agree. Yeah, based on what it had been for the first month plus of the season, yes, that would be great if they could just be solid the rest of the year. I would definitely take that, and hopefully it gets Chris Tennant some confidence. I mean, the thing with him though is like I feel like you almost trust him more from 47 than you do 27, and so that's something that we're still gonna have to monitor throughout the rest of the year. But okay, peeking ahead a little bit to TCU, I did not see coming what happened in Fort Worth at all. You guys make fun of me for being too high on BYU. Felt pretty stupid on Saturday with them just absolutely cleaning the clock of BYU with a backup quarterback in Josh Hoover. Although on that front, and I realize I'm a K-State fan saying this, where you could make the case that K-State has started the wrong quarterback 2 years in a row. But like, does Chandler Morris have pictures of Sonny Dykes in like compromising positions, like hookers and blow or something? Like, how has Chandler Morris started 2 years in a row, where last year it's a Heisman finalist who took the team to the national championship game behind him, and then this year Josh Hoover, this redshirt freshman who was an Indiana commit before TCU swooped him up, goes out there and throws for 400 plus yards on BYU after Chandler Morris has just looked very mid throughout the entire season. I do not understand what Sonny Dykes and company have been doing there, but their offense looked a lot better. He made a couple mistakes. He threw a few picks, but man, 400 yards and 4 touchdowns in your first start is pretty damn good.
Yeah. I'm just not jumping to anything. The Big 12 has taught me a lesson through 3 or 4 weeks at this point, is that one game means almost absolutely nothing. A body of work I'll start to buy into. We thought Oklahoma State was trash. They beat K-State and KU. We thought Iowa State's trash. They beat TCU by 2 touchdowns at home. It could have been more. They beat Oklahoma State. West Virginia looks fine. They lose to Houston. You can't trust anything. So just as much as that was impressive by TCU, it could honestly be a goddamn fluke.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not going to take anything away from the BYU game against TCU. BYU's offense sucks. Like, I just don't think BYU is a good football team. So, I mean, maybe I'm surprised that they won that game by 33 with a freshman quarterback and Josh Hoover playing. But at the same time, I'm not surprised at all that TCU won that game handily, because I just not a BYU advocate this year. I don't think they have the personnel or the talent to be a top 8, top 9 team in this league, even though the league is down right now. So, yeah, I mean, I don't even know what to take from Josh Hoover's performance. I mean, dropped back through it like nearly 60 times, threw for 440 yards. I didn't get to watch the game. But TCU's got some weapons at the skill position. Amani Bailey at the running back spot is a really talented back. I think he's in the top 5 in the country in rushing yards. And then they got some guys at wide receiver. Man, I was just looking at one of their wide receivers, Jalen Robinson, started his career at Oklahoma, then went to UCF, then went to Ole Miss. Now he's at TCU. I mean, gosh, these guys got so many guys that transferred in at the wide receiver position. JoJo Earl from Alabama, Savion Williams. He's not a guy that transferred, but 6'5". Look, they're gonna challenge K-State a little bit. They're gonna challenge their secondary and draw. They've got talent on the offense. So it'll be a test. You hope you get Will Lee back in this game. I think I saw Brendan Mott playing with a cast on his hand on Saturday, and then Austin Romaine as well.
Brendan Mott got hurt in the game, so that was something they put on during the game.
Okay, neat. So as a hand, I mean, you see DNs play through that, frequently. So they casted that up. I don't know what it was. And then Austin Romaine, they said on the broadcast, was playing with a broken wrist. So a little beat up right now.
How did that slip through the cracks? Like nobody knew about Austin Romaine having a broken wrist?
Well, if he's playing with it, they were going to.
Yeah.
Man, what a tough dude as a true freshman to be out there with a broken wrist, and and then he got dinged up late in the game. But he walked off fine. I don't know what it was. So hopefully he's okay. Because they can't afford any more linebacker injuries.
I don't. Is Terry Kirksey going to be ready to help out a little bit at some point?
I don't know. I'm not sure he makes travel. I don't know if he travels.
I think Coach Kleiman said on his radio show a couple weeks ago, he just had been dinged up for much of the time since he's been here. So hopefully he can get healthy. I mean, we didn't even... I feel bad because we already talked about the K-State defense, John.
But I will say,
Let me shout out Kobe Savage. I mean, obviously the interceptions, but like he was flying around, hitting the hell out of people too. And he's one of the guys. Like every week he brings the energy. But like two guys that were tone setters this week, Seth Porter and Kobe Savage, for the energy and attitude that they brought to that game. So yes, 100%.
Yeah, what I will say is that defensive performance feels a little like, I don't want to say fluky, fool's gold. Man, that's the worst tackling performance I've seen from Kansas State in about 3 or 4 years. That was really bad. That was really, really bad.
I mean, Taj Brooks, in fairness, like Taj Brooks is pretty damn good.
I get it. No, I get it. But that was, I mean, there's a reason why there's about 9 guys with a PFF tackling grade under 30.
Yeah.
So it was like Kobe Savage. I mean, I liked the intensity that they played with. I liked the turnovers that they forced, but that was bad tackle.
And Tech fans' big complaint, and I would echo it. I know Cole seems to disagree a little bit on this, but Tech probably, especially when they had to go to true freshman quarterback, should have just given the ball. They should have fed Taj Brooks a little bit more. I think K-State is a bit fortunate that they went away from that earlier than they should have.
Maybe earlier. I don't know. But what I will say is, like, Tech fans seem to agree with you on that. I think now they're calling their offensive coordinator Zach.
They want Kitley fired.
Yeah, they're calling him Zach Shitley, is what I.
Clever. Well, yeah. I mean, look. So at the end of the day, Tech averages over 6 yards per carry. Although Jake Strong had the 54-yard rush where he broke free at the quarterback position. Taj Brooks ends up with 5.8 yards per carry, 98 yards on 17 carries. He had 31 carries against Baylor. So yeah, you would think they would have ran him more, especially when they're playing the second half with a backup quarterback. I also, though, went through like all of Taj Brooks' carries in the game, and he had 12 of his 17 carries went for 4 yards or less. 9 of them went for 3 yards or less. I don't know. Like he had a 30-yard run and a 13-yard run. He had 2 runs over 10 yards.
I think, that's definitely true. I think what is painful is like that 3 or 4 yard run probably should have been a tackle for a loss of 2. Like you can't say dominate line of scrimmage. They were making contact with a lot of these dudes behind the line of scrimmage or at the line of scrimmage, and they still turn into 4 or 5 yard runs.
Yeah, and the other concern I would point out for TCU, especially Cole, when you're talking about guys like Savion Williams who are huge, Jacob Parrish got picked on. I mean, they were definitely going after Jacob Parrish for a while there, and some of it. I mean, it's just he's a pretty good cover guy, but he is limited in size with what he can do. So yeah, I mean, TCU's skill talent concerns me.
Which is will compete the heck out of the ball, and he can cover. But if they want to put him in a 1-on-1 situation, like ball skills be damned, there he's at the mercy of that.
That's why it'll be important to get your 6'3" cornerback and Will Lee as well, just to have another bigger corner out there on the football field. I thought Marquis Siegel had another nice game.
Yeah,
I think he's really playing well in Big 12 play. I don't know what you think, DY, but I think he's coming on.
I thought the safeties probably played their best game in totality, because I thought VJ Payne played pretty well. I thought Marquis Siegel played really, really. I think Siegel was probably the best safety, even though Kobe Savage had the safeties in the end. Had the numbers in the energy. I thought Siegel was probably the best safety. I thought the linebackers probably left a little bit to be desired, to be quite honest. and I thought the defensive line dominated the line of scrimmage. That's the way I see it. I think Keenan Garber really had a good game.
Okay.
Yeah, did they throw a Garber like a single? I don't remember them ever really throwing Garber.
A couple times, obviously not as much, but I mean he's getting it done. That's part of it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like that's the impressive part of it. Yeah.
They moved Siegel up. Wasn't Siegel playing a little corner too, or am I misremembering that?
I didn't see it. I think Jordan Wright did, and he got beat a couple times.
Yeah, there was a really frustrating one that was a back shoulder throw where K-State really could have picked it or at least knocked it down, and they get a 40-yard toss.
Yeah, in general, I would say that some of the, even like, I'm not going to say like 50%, but like 20, 30% of the receptions, it feels like the Kansas State gives up. It's just like a lack of like ball awareness or ball skills. Like they're in where it's like Julius Brents 2 or 3 years ago, right? It's like, man, he's in best position all the time, still gives up the catch somehow.
But to your point to start off the pod, I mean, the reason they were in that position with Jake Strong being in the game is partially because K-State got after it to start the game and was putting Baron Morton on the ground a lot. And you could see it. They kept flashing him on camera. He didn't look right. Like he looked beat up.
The one, I think it was the one. Now, obviously, there is a body of work here where he, the toll, but Khalid Duke laid him out one time. And I know you got to go soon, Kurtz. I see that.
Well, I was going to point out Siegel probably should have had a pick 6 too in the first quarter. Like, he was right there. I didn't see what was in front of him, but he had a head of steam and he had a break on the ball. And I think it was they hit Baron Morton on that play, I believe, right? And that left the ball a little wobbling behind. So that was indicative of what was going on there at the beginning of the game. So yeah, Baron Morton also, according to some of the tech folks, it sounded like he wasn't practicing much during the week. I think he came into the game a little bit beleaguered, and so probably good strategy there by Klanderman to dial it up and come after him, and it worked. So anyway, good vibes, a lot more fun this time around than last week for sure. We're gonna have a ton of content coming up this week because these guys will be at Big 12 Basketball Media Day on Wednesday. Looks like we're all going to be at the golf tourney on Thursday, so we'll have a bunch of basketball content coming your way, and I think Derek and Cole will squeeze in a football pod in the midst of that as well. So we're gonna make it work with some busy schedules this week.
We might have an interesting good guest on as our player spotlight this week, and then I'll have the pod with Curry Sexton too this week. I don't know how I'm gonna do it.
An interesting good guest. That's a hell of a tease, Cole.
It's a really great tease.
Well, interesting, good guest coming up for you guys.
Interesting. Yeah. You're a hell of a salesman.
Yeah, that's a great sales pitch there, guys. Maybe I could cue a little John Denver sunshine on my shoulders. As a guest.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I only know that because for some reason my twin daughters like that song. So. Yeah, when they're not getting beat by Brody in the backyard in coverage, they listen to that.
I mean, I love Brody, but that was pretty much Jaron Bradley in the back of the end zone.
Oh my God,
that was happening there.
It happened at the line of scrimmage. He can knock her down if he needs to, and she flopped. So I signed with Brody.
Have some frog legs for dinner.
Okay, don't throw that though. Don't throw that. So
it actually just shipped. So this is brand new.
Okay, good. Okay, don't throw that. We throw beer.
You're wearing Arizona stuff, and then you're getting a TCU helmet shipped just in time for the TCU game.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, we don't throw TCU. You don't throw helmets. You throw beer bottles.
Strike this. I got to collect things.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you throw beer bottles when you're TCU. You don't throw helmets. All right.
Well, this is your week to retaliate. You gotta make sure that you got some cans loaded up, ready to go on Saturday.
That's right, baby. That's right. That is right. It is hate week right now. It is on. That's why I'm bringing the energy at 7:30 in the morning this morning, because it's TCU week, and yeah, we're gonna load up on Saturday. Gonna get the arm loosened up and see if we can reach from 32 rows deep.
I would like a non-night kick at one of these days.
I agree. Like the night thing.
From a professional standpoint.
Yeah, no, I get it. It's getting a little old. Okay, well, look, DY people want to watch the Cats in prime time. The 2.3 million of them saw them in Stillwater. Again, I will remind everybody. Okay, thanks for listening. We appreciate you all. Shout out to Holiday Distillery. Get your Ben Holiday bottled and bond bourbon, your 360 vodka. Go to homefieldapparel.com. Use promo code 3MAW23 for 15% off your first order. Go to patreon.com/3MAW to sign up to get bonus content from us. We really appreciate all of you who support us there. We appreciate Nick Springer behind the scenes. For Derek Young and Cole Manbeck, I am John Kurtz. Thanks for listening to 3 Mon. Take care.